Actalliance is Action by Churches Together Alliance. We are a rather newly founded alliance, only 3-year-old, but we pull together around 140 churches and church-related organizations coming primarily from Protestant and Orthodox denominations. We work in 140 countries where our members engage in humanitarian relief, in development programs, and in advocacy work. That is Actalliance in snapshot. Our purpose is really to end poverty and bring justice. We advocate for full life and dignity for all. That's the ambitious goal of Actalliance.
And what sort of role can you guys play? Is it one where you're mobilising support in different countries, or do you feel you have a do you have a voice or a power at talks like this to influence?
I guess we would see primarily our goal and role as an amplifier of the voices of local communities. Churches really have roots in local communities, but we have also this global reach. And we try to use that to bring really the voices from local communities, even to the processes which are in national and global level. I think that for us, obviously, the tangible response work is one key part of the mission of the church, that in, floods in Cambodia, in the recent typhoon in Philippines, in the food crisis in Sahel, our churches and our members are effectively responding to the human need. But also in the sort of context of preparing and accompanying communities to prepare themselves for disasters. We are heavily in the picture. Often our response mechanisms would be really community-based preparedness mechanisms. In addition to that, churches play a big role in accompanying refugees, climate refugees and other who need to flee their communities. So we are often both in the camps, but also in the host communities, receiving the communities. So we really have this role in the response. But for us, working from rights-based perspective, it is also necessary to bring the voices of the local communities to political processes like this. So we actually encourage and we accompany our members to work in national levels, in influencing government policies and in accompanying local community leaders as they voice their concerns. But we also have a big faith delegation here in Warsaw in advocating sense of urgency and the real need to find urgent solutions.
We seem to be living in an increasingly secular and digital world. Do you think people still listen to churches? Do you think politicians still pay attention to what churches have to say?
Well, it's a good question, especially as we are here in Europe, and I guess two Europeans discussing this. Churches in Europe find themselves increasingly in a secular context. But then if we look at other regions, faith really is a key driver for people. And I think that especially in the situations of justice and equity, churches have a lot of possibilities to speak with the people, but also on behalf of the aspirations of especially those who are poor and vulnerable. I think that even here in Europe, churches are still regarded as a credible and interesting voice, in particular on issues of equity and justice.
And, a lot of people like to think of churches as perhaps just an advocating change, but many churches often have a lot of power themselves, both financial and in terms of the amount of land they own. I, for instance, coming from the UK, never realised quite how much land or money the Church of England had managed to accumulate, and it seems like it's determined to use a lot of that to help drive social justice, be it trying to put payday loan companies out of business or investing in renewable energy. So what kind of power do you feel churches have in that respect, and is enough of that power being used in the right direction?
Well, quite purposefully, we have chosen climate justice as our key advocacy topic because we feel that there is as much we should be speaking to the world that we should be speaking to ourselves, and to ensure that we have those proper, we have the sense of urgency within the churches to address ecological issues and issues of climate change, but also that we can then credibly speak to the world. Indeed, churches often own land, they invest, they have property, so even issues around, waste management, energy management are really core issues churches with their major portfolios of property and finance should be able to address. But in addition to that, I think that churches have a huge task in actually educating and mobilizing people to help people to understand the changes around them, and perhaps to discuss and to understand some of the ethical questions which are related to those changes. It's very difficult to me to imagine how the Northern Hemisphere could endlessly demand sustainable development for itself without granting that same precious rights to the most poor and vulnerable in this world. So I'm kind of thinking that it's very difficult to imagine that we would be able to solve these problems of global magnitude without actually making changes in our own lives, also in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm kind of believing that churches, among many others, have a lot to say in sort of provoking our thoughts and in actually calling us to take bold and ambitious steps for climate justice.
Interesting. Do you think you can be a good Christian without having a sound respect and a desire to protect the environment?
Well, that's quite a question. I think I'm the last one to tell, who would be a good Christian or not. But let's put it this way: that we are definitely called for a good stewardship of our planet, and I think that we have been poking the planetary boundaries for quite a while, and perhaps we should stop doing that.